Isaiah Hartenstein worth $20 million a year? Does it spell the end of Mitchell Robinson? How should the Knicks build their front court for the future? Hit that rock. Salute. Before we get started, make sure to use a dark notification bell to get each and every notification for each and every video I put out there. Subscribe to the channel, hit the likes. I appreciate you guys. Also visit underdogfantasy.com to use the code word Legion LK to get matched up to $500 on your first deposit with Underdog Fantasy. I appreciate you guys. Let's get to it. So according to Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports, Isaiah Hartenstein could fetch up to $20 million per season on his next contract, $80 to $100 million on the contract in full. This is after initial rumblings that deal around $15 to $16 million could be done with the Knicks, given that Isaiah Hartenstein wants to stay with the team and the New York Knicks want to retain his services. Now, the Knicks will be a little bit hamstrung by the cap situation. They can offer him up to $72.5 million given his early bird rights, which would amount to around $18.1 million per season. And assuming OG Anunoby resigns for at max $35 million, Knicks will definitely be over the first apron, but just slightly under the second apron, around $187 a million per. So it is definitely a situation that will take some maneuvering by Brock Eiler, but it's something that could be doable. And I do think, given the recent transactions as well as some of the other teams who could be interested, the Knicks should definitely have some leverage on their side. But let's get to it. Let's break it down. Now, just to give some color, here's some of the most recent center transactions. Most of them lie around that 14 to 16 million per season range, outside of guys like Anthony Davis, as well as Miles Turner, who just re-signed with the Pacers. But again, guys like Okongwu, Isaiah Stewart, Nikola Vucevic, even Naz Reid have all stayed around that 14 to 16 million per. So Isaiah Hartenstein at 15 million. 16 million would definitely be around the so-called average market rate for centers with regards to recent transactions, but 20 million would definitely put him on the more expensive side. Now, does he have more value, I guess, to the Knicks compared to some of these other centers around that 14 to 16 million, given the injuries to Mitchell Robinson and how Tom Thibodeau's implemented it into the offense? You can argue, but I still think that 15 to 16 million is the proper market rate for a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein. Now, Jake Fisher does mention some other teams, one of them being the Brooklyn Nets, with the situation with Nicholas Claxton, where he's reporting that he could see up to 20 to 25 million per season on his next contract. Nicholas Claxton, who I actually felt had a better run last year with Kyrie Irving. Even though if you look at the numbers, his numbers actually slightly better without Kyrie Irving, but I thought that he started to truly come on when Kyrie Irving was there. He's a guy who's up for, I believe, Defensive Player of the Year consideration, as well as Most Improved Player consideration as well too. And I thought a lot of that came under Kyrie Irving. They played really well together, but he's definitely going to be a piece for them, I think, going forward, just to give him some stability with Jordy Fernandez coming in, possibly some upheaval in their front office, given the fact that they got the minority investment by the Koch brothers. And, you know, Sean Marks is definitely on the hot seat. They still have to figure out their point guard situation. But with them and, you know, Nicholas Claxton, I think that they'll probably prefer to go the Nicholas Claxton route versus go with something in more of the unknown. And obviously Isaiah Hartenstein being for the Knicks, I don't think he's going to truly, you know, ruffle out feathers. If he leaves, it would be pissed, but it's not as if, you know, they're acquiring Randall or Jalen Brunson. So I think they might be set on that front regarding their center situation. Another team that Jake Fisher mentions is the OKC Thunder. Now, people might look at this kind of odd because the OKC Thunder have tried to build around these functional kind of big front court guys who can also kind of play as like guards or wings, guys who can facilitate, guys who can shoot a little bit as well too, could attack the rim kind of like a guard or wing. But when you look at some of their numbers last season, definitely the things that Isaiah Hartenstein offer would fit them really well, even though Jake Fisher says it would be somewhat of an odd fit. But again, his passing, especially his rebounding, will come into a great value for the Thunder, who last season were 27th in total rebounding, 29th in offensive rebounding, and the Thunder only have 103 million on the cap next season, so they have a lot of runway. They got a lot of young pieces, and Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, are not going to get paid until I believe it was 2026, 2027. They're looking to also move on from guys like Josh Giddey, Ousmane Dieng, who I like a lot, is still a project. Spent some time in the G League. There's a player that is still looking at to see how he fits, but again, he's more of like a big old 3, if that makes sense, versus a prototypical 4-5. They could definitely use some protection for Chet Holmgren, so Isaiah Hartenstein could definitely be an option with them. They could spend that 20 to 25 million. Again, they have Western Conference aspirations, and so getting a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein to play the defense as well as the rebound they need so badly in that front court, also open up the passing game a little bit for them alongside SGA, could definitely be a possibility. It'd be really a lot of. When was the last time you had a solid white front court like that? I'm not trying to make a ratio. I'm just thinking. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. And Isaiah Hartenstein, I know he doesn't really seem like an OKC type of guy, but when the money talks, the people walk. So we'll see what happens on that side. But OKC Thunder definitely an option for Isaiah Hartenstein. It could be a leverage piece if the Knicks don't want to bulk up and pay a little bit extra money over what for what the initial starting point might be. Another team that could definitely be interested in Isaiah Hartenstein's services is the Detroit Pistons, as Jake Fisher mentions. But with Troy Weaver leaving, Trajan Langdon coming in, and them already having guys like Jalen Duren on the squad, I'm not sure the Pistons are going to be focusing on trying to get another center. They're not anywhere near contention. They still have to figure out their Kate Cunningham, Jaden Ivey situation. Just their whole roster in general. They do have 87 million on the books, so they have to spend the minimum. I think the season is going to be around 122 million, but they have to spend the money somewhere. But again, I just don't see Isaiah Hartenstein trying to go over to the Detroit Pistons, who are nowhere near close to contending for an extra $5 to $7 million. Now, back in the day, you do remember guys like Ben Wallace, who left the Detroit Pistons, of all teams, left them for the Chicago Bulls, talking about he wanted to be featured more on offense or that jazz. He was getting paid $4 million more each year on his contract with the Bulls, and his tenure there just went to absolute dog-ish. He's exposed badly, and I just see the same for Isaiah Hartenstein. Not say in terms of if he goes to Detroit he's gonna do terribly, but it's like, why leave? Why leave where you're comfortable? You're right there as an ECF contender, possibly a championship contender, for an extra $5 to $7 million per se to be downtrodden, depressed there, and then probably traded off, maybe to a contender when the time comes. But why do that when you're already comfortable in New York? And this is a guy, Isaiah Hartenstein, back in 2022, he said he was comfortable with the Clippers. This is a guy that wanted to stay with the Clippers, but unfortunately couldn't make a deal happen. He's a guy, I think, that he likes to invest himself with a team, whichever team he's finding some decent success with. He doesn't want to leave. And so that speaks volumes, and that also speaks volumes to the expectation that I think that he could be signed for 15 to 16 million. Now, Jake Fisher is not me coming at Jake Fisher, but I think the 20 million is just kind of some conjecture. I think the 15 to 16 million is around the right space. Now, obviously, still be above the first apron if you're keeping Bojan Bogdanovic at 19 million past that June deadline, and OG gets signed for 35 million. It'll be that cushion. You'll be over the first apron, right below the second apron. But I still think at 15 to 16 million is a sweet spot. The Knicks just got to make it happen between the two teams. Another team is the Magic. Jake Fisher points out as well too, but as he notes, the emergence of Mo Wagner, or Mo Wagner's importance on that team. They also got Jonathan Isaac's recovered. Guy played out of his mind this season when he came back. I wish Knicks could have gone. And obviously the presence of Wendell Carter. It makes Isaiah Hartenstein's value just not as high for a team like the Magic. I just don't see them going after Isaiah Hartenstein like that. Their issue is shooting, scoring, and they need a legitimate two guard. I think that's probably where they're going to be focusing their energies on. Another team is the Spurs. Just in my eyes, it's not what Jake Fisher wrote. I think that having a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein to help you facilitate and get the ball out to Wembanyama, something that the Spurs struggle with. A lot of their guards have been very hungry and getting their own, and kind of ignoring Wembanyama, even though Wembanyama, he had a great rookie season, or really good rookie season. But also a guy to rebound, take the brunt on defense in the front court to help protect Wembanyama. Isaiah Hartenstein could definitely be that. Remember, Will Hardy was a big fan of Isaiah Hartenstein's game, and granted, Will Hardy's with the Jazz, but he's an acolyte of Popovich, And a lot of Popovich's acolytes, they're, in terms of how they value the game and in terms of the fundamentals they look at, it doesn't really waver off that much. So, I can't speak for Popovich, but given the fact that Will Hardy was definitely a fan of Isaiah Hartenstein, could definitely mean there's some interest there. And ultimately, look, I think he does end up back with the Knicks. His complementary play next to guys like Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, even Jalen Brunson is just too highly valuable. His facilitating from the pinch, the dribble handoffs, finding the cutters, the ability to run a triangle on the strong side, his ability to break the doubles that Jalen Brunson sees a lot of times, or break the zone even, is too valuable. His offensive rebounding, his defensive rebounding as well too. His defense period, his rebounding period on both ends of the floor is just too much. I mean, Tom Thibodeau, these are things that he's been trying to instill in this Knicks team for a while. The rebounding, the facilitating from the bigs, something that he can't even get out of Julius Randle, and damn sure can't get out of Mitchell Robinson. So he adds another dimension in the front court that we've needed, and something that he's been looking for since Joakim Noah. I mean, if you look at his impact this season after Randle got hurt, especially in the playoffs, the Knicks ranked 5th out of all centers in assists per game at 3.5 a game, 5th in assisted points created. And look, although he's not a great three-point shooter, his ability to find cutters, to facilitate, also attack the ball with a few dribbles here and there, opens up the floor a little bit more for other players on the team. Screen game is invaluable. And compared to guys like Mitchell Robinson, who lack in that area, he just allows a little bit more creativity. If that maybe that's too strong a word, but a little bit more versatility in the offense. Where if Mitchell Robinson's in, the offense is going to be really ran through either Julius Randle or Jalen Brunson. And that brings me to another question: does Isaiah Hartenstein's value on this team, especially with how the Knicks played this season and how far they got in the playoffs, does that make Mitchell Robinson even more, or does it make Mitchell Robinson expendable, period? Now, we all know Mitchell Robinson was on his way to put up some historic numbers last season before he got hurt in December. Mitchell Robinson was leading the league, I want to say, in offensive rebounding. His rebound, I believe he was averaging 10 rebounds a game or something like that before he got hurt as well, too. Box outs. I mean, the defense as well too. Mitch Robinson was put on as a guy who can't really create or shoot. But when you look at the numbers, before early December, before he got hurt in December, the Knicks were 9th in defensive rating, 3rd in offensive rebounding, 5th in total rebounding, 11th in offensive rating. Where obviously offensive rebound has a strong impact on. But in the period from early December to late March, before he came back, the Knicks ranked 6th in defensive rating, 2nd offensive rebounding, 5th in total rebounding, and 15th offensive rebound. But remember, during that period, Julius Randle was also out after, I believe it was late January. So that good chunk from that late January on to the end of March, Randle's out. And so the offensive rating, despite the fact that the Knicks have never been elite in points per game, or at least top 10, top 5, even with that, Randle being out definitely hurt the offensive rating numbers. So you can argue that dip in offensive rating is more so because of Mr. Julius Randle versus Mitchell Robinson's presence, or lack thereof. Now, again, when you look at a lot of the things that Mitchell Robinson offers, especially in terms of rebounding and defense, Tom Thibodeau, his philosophy is almost like a next man up thing regarding those tangibles. And when you look at the acquisition of Josh Hart, acquisition of Hart as well too, even going back to Tom Thibodeau's first year here, when Nolan Well stepping in for injured Mitchell Robinson, Tom Thibodeau's always been able to put up elite, or for the most part, put up elite team rebounding, defense, which is the name of the game outside of this year in the playoffs, which was terrible defensively, and the second year here, Tom Thibodeau's here, defense was absolute trash. But when you look at the fact that the Knicks have been able to cover those gaps while Mitchell Robinson's been out. You look at his contract at $15 million. Also, Bojan's contract at $19 million. Create $34 million if you could trade that off for another guy. And Mikal Bridges. Now again, it looks like they're going to re-sign Nicholas Claxton, and the Nets and the Knicks typically don't deal with each other. Again, haven't had a trade since 1983. Was it Don Elmore? I apologize for forgetting the guy's name. That was the last trade the Knicks did between each other. So it's highly unlikely that they can make something work out. But I will say this, having about 17% of your cap With Mitchell Robinson, as Isaiah Hartenstein, assuming he gets re-signed for 15, anywhere from 15 to 20 million, so it'd be around 17 and maybe more of your cap being used for two centers. It's just not the wisest of investments. And so I do think that Mitchell Robinson does become a little bit more expendable, especially regardless of how we approach this draft. Now, there are rumblings that the Knicks are going to possibly use the 2 picks to kind of monetize that into something else, whether it's to either move up or maybe for a star player. Just saying, the rumors are out there the Knicks are going to use their 2 first rounders this season to do something. But just assume that they either they use it to move up in the draft or they keep those 2 picks. They could look into this season or this offseason in drafting a guy like a Khalil Weir, getting some cheap talent at that front court position, expand the offense, be able to space the floor out a little bit better. Again, his catch and shoot numbers were strong this past season at Indiana at 40%. So he's been a decent shooter from the outside, 73.1% finisher at the rim. He's a guy that he has some decent moves in the post. I wouldn't call him, the greatest, but he's a decent enough finisher. And again, his biggest issues is battery and his focus. He has some bad plays on a pick and roll, loses focus at times. Cutters cut him behind him. He loses a man on the roll. But this guy could defend at the rim, could defend at the paint, and guard his battery too. He had some hot, cold games, but go back to games like Wisconsin this season. He had 27 points, I think 11 rebounds, 5 blocks. Just all over the place, screaming. And I'm not saying that's you showing that you care and you focus, but get a guy like him, stashing him behind the Knicks, the strong Knicks culture now. You have Julius Randle, you have Isaiah Hartenstein, you have Jalen Brunson, you have Josh Hart, you have Dante Vincenzo, you have the ECF dreams for the season. The next, that's a guy I would say you stash for the next 1 or 2 years. Not say stash, but slowly bring him along. And he could be an absolute godsend. Again, the ceiling's so high for this guy, Khalil Weir. It's just about his motor and his focus, something I do think the Knicks locker room and culture could definitely align in a proper direction. And again, the spacing you create too. You have, how many times you see where Isaiah Hartenstein and Pressure Chua on one side just randomly do a possession and literally there's no shooting option on that side, so it kind of bogs down Brunson up top trying to dribble and run some type of plays with Dante and maybe Josh Hart on the other side, Dante McBride. Have a few times at a play-up. So having a guy like Khalil Weir, create even more space in that front court, pick and pop option, something that I have not seen the Knicks do with a big on the team outside of Randall in a while. But having that option on the pick and roll, space out the floor, a guy, when we talk about his offensive ceiling, could definitely be what Tom Thibodeau tried to envision with Cat. Not saying he's Cat. I'm not saying Khalil Weir is Cat. I'm just saying the offensive dynamo that you're trying to create in your front court could definitely be achieved with a guy Khalil Weir if you push the right buttons. Other guys like Kyle Filipowski, who I'm not the biggest fan of. Not the biggest fan of Kyle Filipowski, but he does offer some shooting ability. I like the pick and pop ability. I think that Kyle Filipowski coming into the league, I think he's definitely going to be a pick and pop guy coming through. I think some of the finishing at the rim is going to suffer. I'm not the biggest fan of his footwork as well too. In the paint, it's good. It's not bad. It's good, but I just don't see him, having that ability in terms of imposing his will in the paint so readily once he gets to the NBA. But I think the pick and pop is definitely there with a guy like Kyle Filipowski. So again, 2 guys that, especially more so Khalil Weir, that if you want to go cheaper and kind of monetize, weaponize Mitchell Robinson's contract to get the star that you want involved from him, definitely look at some cheaper options like Khalil Weir and, like I said, Kyle Filipowski. But either way, the Knicks have some questions in the front court. Despite Isaiah Hartenstein's relationship with Mitchell Robinson, extending iHeart will speak volumes. Got to start making some tough decisions with some of these players. Now everybody's gonna stay here. I talked about Julius Randle. I got destroyed talking about Julius Randle and possibly trading for Mikal Bridges, but some of these names are gonna have to move on. We talk about getting to the ECF, but also thinking about the future. Now Jalen Brunson, if he takes that sweetheart deal, 4 for 156 definitely helps us out. But if he takes it 270 for 5 in a few years, but even if he takes a 156 for 4, you still have to think about the future. You still got to think about what names could we trade off to get the said star, get the said complimentary player. You also have to think about cheap depth, cheap dynamic depth. And in some of these weaker drafts, sometimes you find gems in those middle rounds. Just because a draft is weak on the top line doesn't mean you can't find some value in later parts of lottery. Well, obviously we in the 20s, but outside of lottery. you can definitely find some gems. So the Knicks are going to have to make some tough decisions come up this draft. Obviously, late June, I believe, is one of the, I don't say toughest, but one of the decisions got to make with Bojan Bogdanovic, whether to keep his contract on, but to keep it on to possibly trade off. 19 million is a good chunk to trade off, and obviously, I think being under or being in the first apron, we have to trade. The trade has to be 100% of the contract versus 125 if you're under the first apron. Yeah, but that's all Brock Oller's job, so thank God I ain't doing that crap. But again, let me know your guys' thoughts on Isaiah Hartenstein, how much you think he's worth, especially in relation to some of the other centers who have been signed, like I mentioned earlier before. Do you think another team can outbid us? Is it OKC? Is it Detroit? Is it the Magic? Is it the Spurs? Is it another team you guys can think of? Does it spell the end of Mitchell Robinson's reign? Not reign, but his time in New York? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is Gmo Leisure Knicks. I appreciate you guys. Peace. God bless. And I'll see you guys on the next one.